Good morning, folks. My name is Declan Hughes and I am CEO of Unity Technology Solutions. Difficult time for us all doing business at the moment. And I know particularly for you it is particularly difficult. The latest CSO stats I could find showed that investment in construction dropped by 47% between 2007 and 2010, and employment dropped by 22% in a single year between 2007 and 2008. So they're old stats. I can only imagine what it must be like for you, because it certainly hasn't gotten any better for you. We would know some of this because we have about 50 construction, engineering, architect companies on our books, and so we do small business with some of them, large business with others. But the feedback is exactly the same. These are really, really challenging times. Unity came into being 1 year ago, in September 1 year ago, by doing an MBO of a business called Calix in Ireland, who ran into some terminal difficulties with Anglo-Irish Bank. So we came into being a year ago and we did an MBO. So why would we have done an MBO in the middle of the worst recession that most of us have lived through? And why would you still be in construction if it is that difficult to be in construction at the moment? And you'd have to say the only reason we would both do this is because somehow we believe that that upturn will come. Somehow we believe that even in troubled times like we have now, you can still run a business and you can still make profits. You can book those trends. And ultimately, we're optimists, because otherwise you wouldn't be sitting there and we wouldn't be here. So we're optimists, and we believe that if we can get some uniqueness in our business during the time of recession, then we'd be perfectly placed to take advantage of the upturn when it comes. That's the only reason we'd still be where we are. So, it's very early in the morning, so we get a bit of participation going. How many people think that they can differentiate their business through the use of IT? Okay, so some of us do believe that. How many people could run their business without IT? Without that cost, because IT is a cost. How many people could run their business without IT? No. Okay, so in that very scientific straw poll, what we decided is that we do believe somehow in there, through the use of IT, we can get some uniqueness into our business to be somehow more efficient, more attractive, get more business somehow through the use of IT. So, would you ever consider generating your own electricity? I suspect the answer to that is no. You wouldn't. Why would you not? Well, generating your own electricity doesn't give you any competitive advantage. You probably can't do it any cheaper than ASB are supplying it to you. And you can't do it any better. You can't get better 220 volts or more consistent 50 hertz. You would never do it. You assume you're just going to consume electricity. That isn't necessarily the way it was always going to be. This guy is Thomas Alva Edison, and he's one of my heroes. He was a prodigious inventor around the turn of the last century, around beginning of the 1900s. Prodigious inventor. He didn't quite invent the light bulb, but he invented the first commercial light bulb that you could use commercially. And he invented what was the phonograph, as he called it then. He was the first one to invent, to be able to capture moving pictures. He was a prodigious inventor. But the reason he's relevant here today is, the other thing he did was, he produced the first commercial power plant in New York. First commercial power plant. And as soon as he did that, then the route for generating electricity was set. There didn't have to be that. He could have decided that he was going to produce lots of small little generators and sell them to households and business, but he didn't. He went and produced the first commercially viable power plant. And here we go. Just a little aside on it. When he did it, he assumed it would be DC, direct current, was the way to go, and his first plant produced direct current out to his consumers. And not long after that, a competing company called Westinghouse produced a plant, and it produced alternating current, AC. Now, already you can see who won the battle, but at the time it was a huge battle as to whether direct current or alternating current was the way to go. And coincidentally, around the same time, they had just introduced the notion of the electric chair to kill prisoners in American prisons as a more humane way, is that the right way to say it? Anyway, a more humane way of killing prisoners. And Edison used that in propaganda. And he coined, in those first few prisoners that were electrocuted, the term wasn't they were electrocuted, he termed the phrase, they were Westinghoused, as a way of saying, that's what you use alternating current for, so you would never let it into your home. It is far too dangerous to let it into your home. And there was a huge propaganda battle on between them. And it reached its peak when to show how dangerous alternating current was, this is back now in the early 1900s, he electrocuted an elephant in Central Park with alternating current to show how dangerous it was. This was his, he thought this was the pièce de résistance. If he could do this, it would absolutely win the game. But interestingly enough, just in case it didn't work, he had fed the elephant cyanide tablets before that, so either way the elephant was going to die. Now, as it turned out, this is one of his inventions that wasn't true. Actually, direct current is much more dangerous at higher voltages than alternating current, and so Westinghouse, in effect, won the day. But anyway, to get back on the message here. So you would never consider generating your own electricity. And yet, you generate your own computing power every day. And I would challenge you with this. If you look at how you use IT within your organization, and you look how you might use IT to differentiate yourself, it is not in the generation of that computing power. That gives you no competitive advantage at all. What gives you the competitive advantage is, how do you use the capabilities that produces for you then? How do you use your CAD drawings? How do you use the data that you store in your organizations to get you more business? How do you use the newer technologies to generate business, to generate more business, or to generate business more efficiently? The production of your own computing power gives you no competitive advantage. And in fact, it's a huge inhibitor to how you will use IT. Most organizations, and this is a research that's been done over the last 5 years, and it's extremely consistent between Microsoft and Gartner, that says 80% of the money you spend on IT, 80%, just goes on maintaining the status quo. Most of that 80% goes on maintaining the production of IT power, compute power, not in how you're innovative in the use of applications, not in whether or not which CAD engine you should be running. None of that. Most of your spend, most of your thinking time goes in producing the compute power. And only 20%, at best only 20% goes to how you will use those new innovative technologies that are around to advance your business. 80% goes in just producing the 220 volts and the 50 hertz. And one of the things, why are you members of CITA? So you're members of CITA because CITA has a goal, and that goal is to try and bring you the emerging trends and technologies so you can be more productive. And so one of the things we try to do today is to say, okay, what are the trends in technologies, the current ones and the emerging ones, that you might be able to take advantage of? And that's a daunting proposition for us. And the reason it's a daunting proposition for us is to try to do that in an hour is almost impossible. The pace of change in technology is incredible. Most of you must have heard of Steve Jobs. He was Mr. Apple. He was co-founder of Apple. He was sort of pushed out in around 1985 when Apple's fortunes began to wane in the late 90s, 97, maybe 98. He came back in and he revolutionized Apple as an organization. I would almost guarantee there is nobody in this room who doesn't use an Apple product, or one of your family use an Apple product. The iPod, the iPhone, the iPad. So everyone uses one of his devices. And he has radically changed the face of IT. These things here, the iPad, radically has changed IT in the world. And many people use one of these. Once you get it, you're hooked. You're absolutely hooked. And the reason it's a game changer, the reason that Apple have totally changed the game is up to now, everyone consumed IT on their PCs. That's what you did. Now it has changed it completely. Now more people will use these sort of things than will use PCs or laptops. What does that mean for you? What does that mean for you in terms of how you're going to market your services, both to business and to consumers? It changes it radically for you. Andy will talk about some of the many, many changes that are coming down. So much so that I can't honestly predict where technology is going to be in 2 years. And I've been in this industry all my working life. I can't predict where technology is going to be in 2 years' time. 2 years ago, the knowledge in the marketplace would have said to you, in your IT environment, lock it down. Be very careful what you let onto your network, lock it down. That has been turned on its head in the space of 2 years. Because you cannot lock it down if most people want to use these. You cannot lock it down if you're trying to get the consumer over the web. You can no longer lock it down. So in 2 years, what would have been considered a truism is no longer a truism. There are technologies that are mainstream today that weren't invented 5 years ago. So how can we predict what's going to happen in 2 years' time? Anyone who tries to is a brave, brave person. But the one thing I can predict is this. Most applications that are being produced today will be produced over the web in the next 2 years. And particularly in the construction industry, because we work with most of the large CAD manufacturers, and all those CAD manufacturers, and I mean in its widest sense of CAD, are producing applications that you no longer buy a license for, stick it on your machine and use it. They will say to you, it's in the data center. You can rent this application from us for so much a month per user. That's an absolute fact. That's what they're going to do. Much more efficient for them to do it that way. And they believe they can get to much more people by doing it that way. I don't know if you know Salesforce.com, it's a CRM, customer relationship management system. Since that went to the market, the only way you can get that is by renting it on a per user, per month basis. And while it's difficult to predict where technology is going to be, that is absolutely the way application delivery is going to go. So what does that mean for you? The only thing you can do today is to make sure you're flexible enough to take advantage of wherever those technologies are going to bring us in the next couple of years. And I do believe if you persist in generating your own compute power, you will not be flexible enough to take advantage of that. So that's the challenge for you today. The challenge for us today is the traditional way of doing it, you're all comfortable with. You all have PCs and servers sitting in your offices. I would guess everyone here has PCs and servers sitting in their own offices. And they age and they get old, and you have to worry about, should I put a security patch on? Should I go to Windows 7 or Windows 8? Should I go to Windows 2008 and start? All these things that consume your mind don't actually bring you any competitive advantage. And if I was to challenge you at all today, it would be in this. Be flexible enough to take advantage of wherever these technologies are going to bring us. Because we in the industry can't predict where that's going to go. Like, this is our job. This is where we live or die. Looking at technologies and trying to predict where they're going to be so we can be a little bit ahead of the curve. If we're struggling with it, I have no idea how you would ever try and keep up with that. And it will change so rapidly now that what we're saying now in 2 years' time, we'll say something completely different. So the only thing we can do is try and be flexible and try and be agile. And I do believe the only way you can do that is to stop generating your own IT compute power. So, a little bit of life relief. And we do have some excellent prizes for this. In your pack, there's a page. And just how long do you think it took for the wireless, for the radio, whatever you want to call it, for the wireless to reach 50 million users? How many years from when it was invented to when it reached 50 million users? There's no right or wrong. Well, there is a right answer actually, but it's only lighthearted. So, let me hand you over to Andy Miller, who's going to do an almost impossible task. He's going to try and talk about some of the trends, and really in terms of the technologies, we're only going to look at 2 or 3 of them in any sort of detail. And in an hour, all we can do is skim over them. So, let me introduce Andrew Miller.
Thanks, Nick. I always have the mistake of showing Declan my slides before I speak, because pretty much every single time he talks about all that I'm going to talk about, so you're going to hear a lot of the same. But the purpose of today, from our perspective, is just to try and give some thought, not necessarily to give you all the answers, but to echo Declan's statement, to give some thought. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, in about 30 minutes or a little bit less, about the changing world of technology. To give you a hint on the first one, this is now the second one, and I think it's ironic that Declan's heroes are Thomas Edison. He referred to the wireless, so that's going to set the scene for a slide I'm going to give now in a few minutes. But the first question was for the radio or wireless, how many years it took to get to 50 million users. Think of a movie with Robert Powell starring in it, that had steps in it, and then subtract 1. Okay? Okay? So that's the answer to the first one. Is everybody with us?
Yeah.
Guys, it's hard for us up here, so it's going to get longer. It's going to be like Marmite. It's going to be very hard for all of us. To palate, or it's going to be very enjoyable. Okay, the second one, for the TV, how many years did it take to get 50 million users for the TV? Okay. So, today we're in a new world. Okay, and as Declan has said, some of the changes that have happened, and unfortunately, you probably heard that Steve Jobs passed away today, so it's changes that have happened. But I have 3 kids, and the kids I have are 14, 11, and 8, and the world that they live in and the things that they understand are far different than we have. So the new information alphabet, and I'm going to challenge everybody here because I didn't know these 2 things, and I work in technology. ORCID and Zorka. Hands up, honestly, who knows what ORCID and Zorka is? Great. Okay. I'm in the same age group. Okay, so my 14-year-old daughter knows what ORCID is. ORCID is a Google offshoot, and it's a social media type company, a bit like a LinkedIn type organization. And so 14-year-olds know about these things. Now that's just strange. How can 14-year-olds know about technology things that we don't know about? And Zorka is probably best seen as a student use of sharing of information and files and collaboration. So there's a whole new technology that's out there that people are talking about that we're not even aware of. And by the straw poll we've just done in this room, we're all common in that perspective. But the good news for all of us, that A is still for Apple. Okay? This is going to be a long morning. Okay, it really is. Some people say I'm useless. It's just I'm not useless. I have useless information, lots of it. Okay, so a few interesting facts, and this was from Gartner last year. At a presentation I was at with Gartner. It took the industry 20 years to make 1 billion PCs. But by 2015, there'll be 2 billion personal devices. Okay? So it took the industry 20 odd years to get to 1 billion PCs, personal computers. And the change will be this. By 2015, there'll be 2 billion personal devices. So devices like the iPad, smartphones, all types of tablets. By 2014, 70% of all devices will be portable. 63 million people will have no office to work in. They will be teleworkers, telecommuters. But here's a strange and sad fact. There'll be 800,000 laptops left, and there are 800,000 laptops left in airports across the world annually. These are Gartner facts. This is not Andy Miller making it up. In London alone, in 6 months, 56,000 mobile phones. And if you consider the information that we now have on our mobile phones, if you consider the information we have on laptops, what are the risks to our business, and where are we going with this? But the trend is that there's going to be more and more of these devices, and the trend is we're going to have more things to manage. And since virtualization went mainstream, the storage consumption has increased by 800%. Okay? To do these things like virtual, to do all these things you need to do, you need more storage, and that's increased by 800%. And as Declan said, if 80% of your time is just spent managing the as-is, it gives you very, very little time to try and figure out how to deal with these new devices and work on strategies. And also, 60% of Irish firms have admitted that their IT budgets have been cut. So, Airfix or Lego, okay? For years, organizations have tended to be very static in their nature. They build something, their infrastructure, their compute power, and that's what it is. And the analogy is, it's like Airfix. Is there anybody in the room who doesn't know what Airfix is? Great, okay. It's really worrying when you do a presentation and people go, I don't know what Airfix is. If people grew up as I did with Airfix is deadly, right? And especially you guys in the creative world, that you've probably been very, very good at. I was useless at the transfers, cutting them off with a bit of paper, putting them in the saucer and the whole thing, you know what I mean. So, if you put the analogies of businesses are a bit like Airfix, your IT infrastructure, it's great, but you can't do anything with it. That's what it is, and for the next 3 to 5 years, that's what you can do with it. But today, businesses need to be dynamic. They need to be Lego. To take effect of all these changes, all the way that the industry is moving, and consumerization of IT is happening, you need to be Lego. You need to be able to be flexible. You need to be able to move and change your infrastructure and your IT requirements to suit the business markets that you're in and the way the consumerization of IT is happening, to stay on top. So, going back to my earlier point, the traditional ways of working. I'm trying to find somebody who represents the traditional ways of working, somebody who aspires to having heroes as Thomas Edison and listens to the wireless. I couldn't think of anybody better. So a traditional way of working, and this is how all of us communicate. This is how we all want to do it. It's planned, it's formal, it's as we're all used to. But with the advances of unified communications solutions around Microsoft Lync, where voice, telephony, Skype, all these things are now part of everyday communication, there is a new type of worker in our workforces who have probably also left our organizations and have left the country potentially due to the economic climates. But the people that we have, the people who we need to retain, this Generation Y, are people who say that work is where I am. Work is on a device of my choice. Work is how I want to do it, when I want to do it. I want to communicate in different ways. I have multiple devices, I have multiple forms of communication. And so for businesses to retain these people, this Generation Y, outside of the recession, outside of the downturn, it's very, very important that we have a technology platform and layers that allow these people to do the work in this style that they need to. Because this is the future of all of our organizations. This is the future of all of our businesses. And so now, how is information consumed? Well, in the Airfix model days, it was great because everybody came to work in a single office and the information was in that office. And it was great, and from an IT perspective, you could control it. But guess what? The information has moved and users have moved, and possibly not in the same direction. And so the reality of the construction industry and industries in Ireland in general are that there's challenges that we all have. And it'd be fair to say that very, very few organizations have CapEx now for IT projects. But there are easier ways to do it because of the OpEx model, instant infrastructure, being able to, as Declan said, use technology that's there, use platforms that exist, and consume this IT as an OpEx. People want and people need to collaborate, and because a lot of the larger organizations have had to go and find business, they're outside of Ireland. So you have staff working on projects outside of Ireland, potentially, are looking for business and hunting for business. They need to be able to have telepresence, unified communications, instant messaging. You know, just time and time again you see organizations like a Danish bank who's located in Ireland, that Facebook was mandated by HR into the organization, as well as instant messaging. Not from an IT perspective, but because the population of the workforce, over 80% of that population wanted to communicate in that way. And so from a HR perspective, IT were forced. It was a Danish bank, and this was a mandate came from group, that they had to allow these type of applications into their organization, because that's the way information is being consumed. People want to do things slightly differently than what we're all used to. So being able to have a business that can provide this thing is important. This Generation Y, the Web 2.0, and we spoke at the start, for CITA themselves, is CITA have a LinkedIn presence? Does CITA have a Twitter presence? Does CITA have social networking? How do you guys communicate? How is this moving forward? It may not be today, but in the next 12 to 18 months to 2 years, these are considerations as the business market changes. And we spoke about this, the consumerization of IT. Microsoft launched this year Office 365. What does it mean for businesses? Office 365 for businesses potentially allows you to take things like your mail platform if you're running Microsoft Exchange and put it into a Microsoft cloud and just have it as a service. It may not suit every business. It may not suit to put all your applications, Microsoft Office applications in that stack, but lots of companies are doing it. Microsoft launched it this year for a distinct purpose. Mobility, we've spoken about devices, we'll talk again about devices. And this model of BYOC, it's all about the I. Would anybody hazard a guess of what BYOC is? Thank you. Top of the class. Prize for you later on for that. In fact, prize right now. Sorry, Declan, we can make some more prizes. Okay. I might need to take it back.
Is it one for everyone? Yeah.
No, it's not literally sure. We can't do that, depending how good everybody is. A sweet maybe go next time. BYOC, bring your own computer. It's all about the I. It's all about and the I is not to do with the iPad or it's about the individual. We need to be planning our organization strategies around giving individual preference to information. And we all know, we all work in organizations that people in our companies, personal computing devices are far better than the ones that come to work on. They're running Macs, they're running, Win 7 where we have XP as our standard, they're running 2010 Office, we have 2003, etc., etc., etc. And if we take our own techies as a good example, most of our own technical people are all on Mac because it's the platform of their choice. And as long as we can serve up the information, the IT that they need in the format that we're happy with and in a secure and trusted manner, they're happy. We don't really want to manage their own devices. So let them. Why are we worried about PCs and devices? If we can secure it and control it, we don't need to know about it. So how do we enable this? And this is just an interesting statistic. On a daily basis, how many devices do you use? Most people. 1, 2, 3, 3. Yeah. 3 is the average. When you think about it, your home PC, your work laptop, your smartphone, your iPad, or whatever else, Xbox, all these things contain information. And if you have kids, I mean, one night last week I had 5 things going on at the same time. Now the great news is you can use them in different ways, but this is the way it is. Who would have thought last year, 2 years ago, 4 years ago, that's the type of devices you use on a daily basis? So BYOC is turned into BYO3. Apologies, it's a Citrixism. Okay, but looking at this one here, this is a good one, Londis. Okay, e-tailing, which is the new word for retailing. Okay, last week, 28th of September, Londis announced that all their stores were getting iPads. Okay, because they found this was a more efficient, a more effective way for them to grab the information from each store and hoover it back to the head office. For a business that's in a very, very tight marketplace with very, very tight margins, it's an incredible investment. Look at our schools. My kids go to a small national school. 15 iPads arrived last week, part of a government grant. So even small schools are getting this type of technology. The technology that kids are consuming, that will soon be adults, that will soon be leaving college. And the survey that was on yesterday in UCD, that most of the students in UCD believe that they should be able to consume IT from their phone when they go into the workforce. Their expectation of what technology means to them is completely different than what we may have as a perception of reality. At the end of the day, some of the solutions we will talk about will help the party say yes, if it's appropriate. But the reality is that these are the changes that are coming down the road. So looking at the cloud in particular, some more useless information. In 2010 alone last year, there was 640 million new Facebook users. Last year there was 700 billion playbacks on YouTube. 5 billion apps sold in iTunes. The past 24 hours alone, 6.7 billion texts were sent. For LinkedIn, which is possibly the most business-oriented social network application that we all think of, had 80 million registered users, and the company was only founded in 2002. Twitter, just 5 years old, is now at 95 million tweets per day. Okay? Some of these technologies aren't relevant for your businesses, but some of them absolutely will be, and will be moving forward. How you reach out to your consumers, to businesses, and how people want to consume IT. And in Ireland alone, 44% of our population has a Facebook account. Hands up who has a Facebook account. That's higher than 44%, I have to say. Okay, so here's a math. Oh, it's not. It's not. Damn. Okay, that ruined my link. Okay, so however, if we're confused about cloud, okay, people aren't going to move to it. And 54% in the survey done in July this year by iReach, 54% of Irish businesses said they're confused about what cloud computing actually is. Out of that 54%, the reason for not moving to it, or one of the challenges, was security of data. So how do you secure data by moving to the cloud? Some of the challenges we'll talk about. The next statistic there was 39% fear of the integration with the existing applications. It's all very well about pulling down Salesforce from the cloud or using Exchange as part of Office 365, but how does it integrate with what I have currently? So these are fears that we need to address with customers. These are things that people need to understand before real cloud adoption comes on. Out of the companies surveyed, 28% are saying they are currently and will implement a cloud strategy. And the reason why they're doing it in the majority of the cases is to reduce their hardware and software costs. As Declan talks about, a lot of the manufacturers we work with, a lot of the engineering application manufacturers we work with are moving to this model as a model only, where they can pull, you will serve this application from the cloud, from data centers into cloud. So the slide I had wasn't there. Okay, so as we move from the PC era to the cloud era, what's going to be the change? What are the things going to happen? Instead of having to build and serve PCs, you'll buy subsections of cloud where these applications are served. You can opt in or opt out. The whole idea is it will be elastic. It doesn't have to be everything. It can be some aspects of it. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing strategy. It doesn't have to be public cloud. It can be private cloud. It can be hybrid. You can have some on-premise. You can have some off-site. It can be your own cloud. The possibilities of cloud are endless. And it's not a one-size-fits-all. So the most important takeaway here is that this is not something that you should be worried about or concerned about from a business perspective, that everything's going to have to change. But gradually, there's a momentum and there's a force that is going to move everybody into this direction. And if this is just a thought-provoking conversation about how does it help, and what's there currently to help you. Your cost will be based on consuming of IT, so they'll be variable. And the model should be a lot simpler for businesses to understand, to help amplify the impact of IT. So, for organizations, do you want to manage this environment, or do you just want to have the knowledge that you have a small piece of that, and that the IT function in your organization is managing that perfect data center world? And the two things we say, if it's not core to your business, especially in the smaller to medium-sized businesses, if it's not core to your business, let people manage it. Use the technology that's out there, the proven technology that's out there to go to the next level. And for those with IT that will always remain having IT, is how to help amplify the impact of IT and get IT seen from being seen as a cost center to a business enabler. So, what we talk about now is this cloud gateway of bridging the gap. And companies like Unity are these aggregators and integrators who work with organizations like yourself, big and small, to deliver infrastructure as a service, software as a service, Microsoft Office 365, web, Windows apps, all the type of things you may be looking at. And infrastructure as a service is this instant infrastructure, this ability to provide a secure piece of private cloud real estate that allow you to serve your applications from. Software as a service is the Salesforce.com. It's where some of these engineering applications are moving to. Office 365 that we've spoken about. And applications. These are the things that maybe in the next number of years, as an OpEx rather than a CapEx, that you might be looking at. Okay, the end of this section. Here is to reach 50 million users of the internet. And for goodness sake, it's a very easy question. I'm trying, really am trying. Right? You have to work with us a little bit. Okay, and the last little piece on this. What is the role of social media in business? And where is it evolving to? Has anybody heard of Mashable.com? Excellent. Generation Y, right on. Mashable.com was founded by, I believe, a Scottish guy, Pete Cashmore. He's at the grand old age now of 25, and he set up this well, originally a blogging site about 4 years ago. So he actually doesn't remember when the fax was invented, but he likened social media to the fax. And if any of you were in business 20, 25 years ago, you probably attended seminars with people like me talking about fax machines. Does anybody remember that? You go into the seminar about it's all about faxes and photocopiers, something like that. And Kieran actually said it many years ago. So people did, right? But nobody now would ever dream about going to a CITA presentation on fax. Would that be fair to say that the fax is just something that's there? We all have them still. We don't really know why we have them, but they're there in case, just in case, the odd time it comes through. So, his view is this, and this is a very interesting thing. He says it's a fad. It's a fad. Why is it a fad? Well, it's just going to be this underlying layer of communication. Moving forward, social media is just going to be this bedrock of communication. It's just going to be there. We're not going to be talking about it. We're not going to be going to events. We ran an event in April this year on social media, and it was packed because people need to know about it. This is part of the conversation we're having today. The conversation was mentioned earlier on. Because where next do you, how do you communicate? How do you reach your marketplace? How do you reach your workforce? And if you think about what has happened in it, it is everywhere. And the communication and how it spreads information is way more pervasive than email. Why is this true? Because people have devices that are capable of capturing this information. And if you take what happened in New Zealand with the earthquakes, you take what happened with China and Japan with the tsunamis and that, you take what happened in the Middle East. the main form of communication and how people understood what was happening was via social media applications. Okay? And so if you have workers who are working overseas and they have no other way of communicating, that's possibly the best way that they're going to communicate what's happening. If you have people who've got family or from overseas, that's possibly how they're going to communicate. So having a blanket lockdown policy from a security perspective on these applications going forward is going to be more and more challenging. Does anyone know the singer Lily Allen? Okay. This is you're going to say, where is he going with this? He's mad, but okay. So Lily Allen has 4.5 million followers on Twitter. Okay? And she last year stuck a tweet up which said, "Who's the CEO of BT? I want to complain. I can't get onto Google and I'm really ticked off." Yeah, that's her tweet. Okay? BT have written software, as most large communications organizations have, that are searching and scraping information from Twitter. So if anything happens that relates to their organization, that they're aware of it. So within 20 minutes of Lillian, who hit 4.5 million people instantly, complaining about a global brand, 20 minutes they're able to solve a problem. Okay? So we can deny and we can say it's not relevant, it's not useful, but sooner or later, this is what's going to happen in the world, all over the place. Okay? And it takes people of power and influence with the ability to type to change things. And if you're in an organization that has consumer or has things like that, you don't want to be in that place, I suggest. So this is what's happening. And this was the slide I thought was going to come on a few minutes ago. It's not just generation-wide. 54% or 58% of all users, a survey of 19 social media networking applications. 58% are over 35 years and older. So we all use these things. Okay, we just have to harness it for that. So we're accepting now, or maybe we're not accepting, that the internet is part of everybody's day-to-day. Again, a bit American, so I do apologize. People do things every day in the office with internet applications, and it's very, very, very hard for people in IT to absolutely secure every single piece of it, given the nature of it. And some of it absolutely is legitimate work, and some of it isn't. Okay? So the challenges are, for organizations, how do you make that discrimination policy when you're talking about these new internet, the Web 2? So it's about policies. It's about understanding. It's about ensuring that you have the right procedures in place to make these things happen. So visibility. Understanding what's out there, understanding how it can be useful for your business, and securing it when it's the right time to secure it. To make sure that you have the right policies and procedures in place. And within, you might decide as a business that we want to have a Facebook presence, but we want to block all usage to all Farmville and all these applications that appear in it. We might want to decide that during lunchtime and things like that, we want to allow our workforce to communicate via Facebook or the way that they want to do it. But we may want to control it and secure it. Having a blanket block moving forward may not be the best strategy for your business. Or allowing HR or marketing to do all these things that they need to do via Twitter, via Facebook and LinkedIn. But being sure that you're compliant is important. And it's self-policing at this moment in time. There is no law, there's no compliance legislation there. But having policy communication software and some of the solutions that we would sell allows you to make sure that you can do the best you can so that your users and your workforce you have the visibility, the security, and you can manage compliance. Two last slides, so we're nearly there. You'll be thankful to know. So, a survey of SMBs in the UK and the US about the extent of IT access to company data. So people are in IT, the access that they have to data within organizations. 42% said that IT staff have full access to the network, okay? Which is not uncommon because the IT have run the network generally, so 42% said that they have full access to it. 39% of senior executives said that they were not aware of what IT can access in the company. So the people at the top of the company weren't really sure, 39% weren't really sure what information they could actually access. 78% said that they could fear that IT could cause malicious damage if they wanted to in their organization because they weren't quite sure what exactly was happening. And 33%, which is even more worrying, felt that staff in IT could access information after they've left the organization Because not only do they have the admin passwords, which can be changed, but quite often when people forget their username and passwords, IT reset them. So they couldn't potentially log in as those people after they left the organization. But this is just a statistics that were put in as this year from 500 SMBs. And strange, 31% of the IT people surveyed said they would consider borrowing some information if they thought that they may be heading out the door. So when we're talking about backups now, we're talking about things that practical solutions about maybe centralizing the information and storing it in different ways and managing it in different ways. It's just interesting to these people. And 12%, I love this, 12% of people who have said they've used their privileges just to have a little look around. just maybe a little peek to see who's doing what in HR, what people are getting paid. And these people admitted to this in the survey, so how many people in the survey actually didn't admit it in the same? So, how many people in your organization have the keys to your virtual filing cabinets? And these are the things that we, all of us in business or IT, whether you're a business person or an IT person within the room here, have to consider. Lots of organizations have solutions to this, but lots of organizations still haven't as yet, and that's obviously why we're standing here. There's nothing sure that the future is ahead of us. It's the fact this is the future. It's whether we choose to go straight ahead or take the next exit. What's right for your business? What does your business need to do to plan and think about the future? And where do you need to be? Like I say, tomorrow night could have been very interesting. The purpose of that, is to say here's a practical example of, thanks Sarah, a practical example of if you're struggling as an organization to back up your files on-premise, why would you not move to the cloud? Why would you not do an online backup? As there's 3,000 customers in Ireland already. And again, these are just thoughts and easy takeaways to say, well, look, you know, is there a better way to look at it? Can we reduce the cost of managing that tape backup, putting it in the cloud? How many people actually back up to the cloud? How many businesses at the moment back up to the cloud? Great. So you guys have seen the benefit of it. So in real life, it makes sense for your business rather than trying to manipulate. Does one assume then that everybody else is managing their backups on premise with tapes and everything like that? Okay. So the answer is maybe there's another way to it. It may not be right for your business. It may be right for your business. And these are the purposes of it. I'm just going to very quickly, because I don't want to keep people too long and I don't want to get into too much technology. Okay. This is an iPad. Okay. This is a full Windows 7 desktop with my corporate applications delivered on that. Okay? So we have recognized as a business that for our own users, Declan, myself, and we have 125 staff, that the thought of lumbering around laptops now for what we do isn't necessarily. To be able to access information on the go on a very slim device is important. But we don't want to put applications out in an area that we are slightly concerned about, so we want to be able to secure them. So the technology I'm going to talk about now for the next literally 5 minutes is technology that allows you to give you on this Apple iPad, okay, which is not a Windows device, all those there that I can pass around afterwards, has all my Office applications, has my Exchange, and it is secure. I can't put any information out of this device, I'm just looking at it and viewing it. But I have my full Office worked up. Because I'm old school and heading towards Declan's generation, I have a keyboard for it. Right, because I need it, because I hate looking at the information on screen and trying to type on screen. Because it's a nice wireless keypad, I have the sense of, ooh, look, it's a laptop. Okay. Product demonstration was never my strong point. Okay, so VDI in a box. So how do we give you, in the small, medium-sized sector, how do we give you solutions like that that allow you access full Windows applications, full information on unusual devices? It doesn't have to be iPad. You know, do you want it on a smartphone? It's probably too small on a smartphone. But other tablets are at home on the home PC, being able to give that full, rich Office content at home on home PC, but without the risk of having to have that information compromised. VDI in a box is one particular technology from a company called Citrix. And Citrix have been in many years in business doing lots of different things around application, desktop, and server virtualization. But they bought a company recently, and it has a particular appeal as a low-cost entry-level strategy. And the strategy here, or the desktop dilemma, as for most organizations, is you have a life cycle. You buy a PC, you image it, you secure it, deploy it, monitor it, maintain it, back it up, and retire it. And that cycle goes on. It could be 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. But it's a cycle, and you have to keep doing it. There's human intervention at every point of that. And then you deploy it out to the users. And the challenge is this: with every user, there's a profile based on who they are, their Active Directory. the applications that they have loaded on those PCs, the desktop OS, and the hardware. If any one of those has challenges, if any one of those breaks, you have an IT headache, you have to bring in third party, or you have to have IT guys looking after all of those things, because they're all stuck together. So if any one of those components break, the whole PC potentially stops working. Yeah? So, if we can do something there, which is move from this tightly coupled PC, this traditional way of deploying it, and move it out so you have this a centralized image of the user profiles, the applications that they may want, and the desktop OS, desktop operating system. If we can separate those from that tightly coupled mix, it means that the user and the hardware are completely independent. So you can have a user on any hardware that they want. And we can then deliver applications or desktops as a service back to them. You can't see it on the screen here, but we've separated all those logical layers, and now we deliver on demand, assemble and deliver out to these user populations the right type of desktop, the right type of applications when and if they need it. And so getting this desktop as a service model means we take the OS from the individual devices, take it back to the center, and then deliver it back out to the individual devices and multitude of other devices as well. That is skimming across at 150 miles an hour, the whole premise of this. But up till now, the roadblocks have been traditionally around, well, it costs too much. Because really for organizations, you want to be able to take the replacement cost of what it costs to manage a PC and deliver it back as a virtual PC, this virtual desktop. And traditionally, over the last couple of years, that model was stopped a lot of this rolling out to a lot of organizations. And actually, can I ask how many people have rolled out virtual desktops in their organization? Okay, great. Okay, that's two, great, super. Have people done server virtualization? Virtualize their servers? Yeah, most people have. So after server virtualization, if people can get their heads around server virtualization, the next thing is what else can we now virtualize? The desktop is the next movement. But it has been blocked a lot of the time because of complexity and cost. But this company called 451 said that this Visa product, this thing that Citrix has just bought, may solve it, especially in the SMB space, because it does everything in a single device. Okay? And it can be multiple devices, but it's a virtual solution. And it's designed for the SMB marketplace. The whole idea is it reduces the cost and complexity of being able to do this. And so can you absolutely then have a solution that could allow you to take desktop information away from the individual devices and deliver it back as virtualized images? That's the potential. One of the big cost inhibitors before was you needed to have a SAN, a separate storage area network, sitting to store all these. This can now be delivered on the individual server devices itself. And it's delivered as a virtual appliance. I'm not going to get into the technologies of it, but the good news is for everybody here, it doesn't have to be a large-scale investment. It can be for 5 remote users. It can be 10, 20 people. Okay? It can be a subset of all you're doing. It can be a very, very easy solution to roll out from that perspective. And in the industry that you guys are in, being able to have that high-definition quality, the high-definition graphics. So if you're using CAD-type applications, be able to deliver them remotely on devices like that in HDX technology is pretty impressive. And it works in conjunction with existing Citrix solutions like ZenApp for application delivery and CAG, which is remote access solutions. So you're able to use it as a full working solution, end to end. In the last 2 years since this product was launched, massive rewards everywhere. The reason why Citrix, which is in the top 10 global software companies in the world, bought it was because it addresses, especially in the Irish marketplace, it addresses the gap which is below enterprise, which is all the organizations, the majority of businesses in Ireland, which are in the SMB to mid-market space, who say, I'd love to do that, but I don't have the budget for that. And if you imagine then this being rolled out as a service on an instant infrastructure platform, can you now get this in as an OpEx? But the CapEx to do this, can we just deliver it as a service? The answer is yes, potentially. So, 10 to 150 users are departments within organizations. Your projects department, it could be your various people who are out of the country, maybe out of the country working, maybe having to access information in a different way. Maybe you want to have people home working, part-time, but you want to give them that corporate desktop, security, maybe on their home device, maybe as a BYOC initiative. All the things we talked about. So, that was 3.5 minutes version of how much longer this presentation you'll be looking.
Okay, folks, we're on the home stretch. Last question. Is this the last question, Andy?
No.
No. No.
So, how many years for the iPod to reach 50 million users? That's the next question here. There are prizes for this.
I think we killed it. I think we just killed it now.
Very quickly, who are Unity? Because we didn't do it at the beginning. MBO of Calyx Ireland last September. It's now, we only operate in Ireland. In fact, hopefully next year we will have the guaranteed Irish symbol on our website. We now have a full Irish management team. We do about 12 million this year, and about 50% of that income is doing maintenance and managed services for people like you. The vast majority of our customers are in that SMB space. We've about 125 staff. We have offices here in Dublin and in Cork, and by and large we're a technical organisation. So we have nationwide coverage, so we do the support for all the Centra and Super Value stores in Ireland. So all their IT, we manage it, so we couldn't do that just by Dublin and Cork, so we have engineers throughout the country. So wherever you are in Ireland, we have an engineer close to you. If you asked us what we tried to do when we came into this market and when we decided to do the MDO, we tried to be a little bit different in the market and try and bring something different to you as consumers. If we were just going to be a Me Too Calyx, we weren't going to do it. And it's this last point really that we're trying to do here. We're trying to bring some of those new technologies to you and say, here's what the market is doing in terms of technology, and here's how we can help you. And so what we can do, if you asked me, is social media right for you in terms of how you do business? I can't answer that question for you because I don't know the construction industry well enough. You do. So should you be marketing on Facebook? I don't know. You know that. Should you be using LinkedIn to try and get your technical contacts out? I don't know that. You will know that. All we can do is try and give you the technology and let you do where the bang for the buck is for you in IT, is don't be generating your own compute power. Just decide how you're going to use those facilities to advance your business. There are 4 things that we do. If you look at the infrastructure side of the business, which is most of what we've talked about here today, it is don't generate your own compute power. So for example, in your PCs in your organization, how many people are running XP on those PCs, Windows XP? Yeah, most people, because that was the last good operating system from Microsoft. If you're unlucky, you went to Vista, and now you're in a little bit of trouble. But Windows 7 is out now, and has been there for a couple of years now. And Windows 8 has just been launched. And Windows 8 will run the exact same operating system on the laptop, on the Microsoft equivalent to this, and on the Microsoft phones. The exact same operating system. They have shrunk the operating system down to a small enough chip that will run everywhere. What does that mean for you? I don't know what that means for you. Except you'll be able to run applications on mobile phones that you could never run before. What does that mean for your organization? I don't know. But if you're still worried about trying to manage Windows XP on your PC, I genuinely think you're worried about the wrong thing in your business. And if you look at that Kavitsa in a box, is that a simpler way for you to remove your brain power from the things that don't add value to your business and allow you to think more of how you're going to use that social media? Perhaps. I'm not going to go through all our customers here because we're running out of time. I do want to try and get a little bit of interaction going. Last one. How long for Facebook to reach 100 million users? And the hint here is it's months, it's not years. And all we're trying to do with this is say, to give you an example, when Andy was out selling faxes and doing seminars on faxes, I worked in a telex exchange. And we believed at that stage that fax would never catch on. And the reason we thought fax would never catch on was because in those days, a telex was a legally binding document and a fax wasn't. How relevant was that discussion that went on there to us today? It is not relevant at all. Maybe 6 or 7 years ago, there was a big debate as to whether or not businesses should allow the internet into their business. Did it have any role to play, and would your end users only be using it to be surfing the web for things that weren't relevant to business? Could you run your business today without the internet? No, you couldn't. That conversation wasn't relevant. These are the conversations that we've had today, is what will be relevant in 2 years' time. And we'll wonder why we ever worried about whether Facebook was going to be the way to market your services or not, or whatever that new technology is going to be. So all those discussions we had some years ago are not relevant to us today. And in 5 years' time, Facebook won't be relevant. It'll either have succeeded and it will be embedded in your organization, or it won't. And if you could harness that ahead of your competition, if that was the right thing to do, and I'm not suggesting that's the right thing to do, but if you could, if you found the right thing to harness, and you harness it ahead of your competition, would that give you competitive advantage? Absolutely it would. And I think the challenge for anyone trying to run IT in a non-IT organization, it is this. Use your brain power and your budget for the things that differentiate you. And leave the boring stuff to people who do boring stuff. You wouldn't generate your own electricity. Why are you generating your own IT computer power?
So, given that potentially I've given most of the answers away, we could have a real challenge here. So, what was the answer to the first one? Robert Pell's movie, that's 1.
38.
Woohoo, thank God. Alright, I'm not giving a prize out because I gave that answer away, so we'll go through them. We'll see at the end, see how many you've got them all right. Okay. TV?
10.
20.
Okay. 13. Okay, so anybody close to 13? Yeah. Oh, there's 13 there. Have you seen this before? Internet? 4? Yes, 4. On the basis I said, for goodness sake, that was a very easy question. And thanks very much.
I didn't get back to it.
See, people. iPod?
2.
Straight. And Facebook? 9.
Well,
So, has anybody got anything close to them all?
honestly, no cheating.
Not another page.
You came up with something close. You came up with something close. Anybody wants a really unusual set of speakers and clock? They'd be more than enough. Did you get anything close? Anything close? I should have one anyway. Anything close? Nothing close. Nothing close. Anybody else? Set a NAF set of speakers for your iPods. Yeah. Clocks? Anybody?
I was reading for it.
Take a clock. 1 clock, 1 set of speakers. Another set of speakers. If anybody genuinely would like some more, we have lots in the back of the office. Lots of speakers. Anybody? Lots of speakers. Yep.
Cheers.
So, last slide. Honestly, folks, I can't predict where that technology is going to go. And it's a bad thing for us to say because we're in the technology industry. If we can't predict it, I really, you have my sympathy in terms of trying to decide how you're going to run IT in your organizations. But we can help. We can at least take away some of the pain and allow you experiment with some of these newer technologies. We have to believe the upcomers come. We have to. I think it was Henry Ford that said, if you believe you can or you can't, you're probably right. I think we have to believe that. Otherwise it's difficult to get out of bed. So when the upturn comes, where do you want to be in your business? Just an interesting. The hard drive failed on our home PC last month. And guess what? I'm in the technology industry and I hadn't got it back up. So the hard drive failed. The people that affected most was myself and my wife, because we're old-fashioned and we store things. We had all our photographs on the PCs. It didn't affect the kids at all. Why not? Because they're on Facebook and Facebook is up in the cloud. And they use instant messaging and it's up in the cloud. They had nothing. It didn't affect them at all. It affected myself and my wife because that's where we had all our documents, that's where we had all our photographs. And if you look, irrespective of what that technology is going to do in the next 2 or 5 years, the one thing that hasn't changed is the thing that's of key value to you in your organization is your information and your data. No matter what happens to technology, that's your key. If you're backing it up on tape, that's a technology that peaked 5 years ago. If you're backing it up on tape, at least 25% of those tapes won't restore. They won't restore. Even within a year, they will not restore. That's just the technology that tapes were. If you did nothing else from this seminar today, look at online backups. Look to at least secure the one thing that won't change in the next 5 years. And that's the value of your data. In a recession, businesses contract. That's the nature of the beast. But probably your IT infrastructure was built in the good times. So possibly your IT infrastructure is overspec'd for what you need to do now. What if your IT infrastructure was totally elastic? You could shrink it as your business shrinks. And when that upturn comes, you can simply expand it. How different would that be for you as an organization? That technology is mature and available today. You know that Microsoft bought Skype? You know Skype? we probably all use Skype, and it's actually a fabulous technology, and the quality of it is far better than it should be. Microsoft bought Skype. What does that mean for telephony? You almost certainly have your telephony system, and you bought it in the good days. Is that right for you now? Are you paying the right call charges now, today? I don't know, but probably you built it and you bought it in the good times. And if you're anything like us, in a recession, you take your business apart and you look where you can take out costs. That's what we did. That's what you must be doing. For you who are not, IT isn't your core business. If you want some help in identifying where you can take out costs, give us a ring. Now, if you've done this already, maybe we can't help you, and maybe you've already done that. But for the chances that you could take out cost in something that isn't core to your business, that must be worth looking at. If I'm honest, can you amplify the effect of IT in your business now? In a recession, it's very difficult, very difficult. I think you can take out some cost. The key to that is, when that upturn comes, where do you want to be in that cycle? Because if your competitors are ahead of you in that cycle, you will miss the first part of that upturn. I'm done.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Alan.
Thank you very much. Thank you.